Hey guys, tonight we step through the heavy oak gates of a medieval monastery, where the world outside fades into mist, the bells echo across cold stone walls, and every hour of your life is suddenly planned for you. It sounds peaceful at first, doesn't it? A quiet place, far from noisy cities, endless meetings, and overflowing inboxes. But don't get too comfortable, because you probably wouldn't survive this, not because of dragons, knights, or dramatic sword fights, but because your alarm clock rings somewhere around the middle of the night, breakfast is barely breakfast, and even chatting with your neighbor can get you into trouble. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're settling in, let me know your location and your local time in the comments. It's always fascinating to see where everyone is listening from as we drift through history together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You take one last glance behind you as the monastery gate creaks shut with a deep wooden groan. The sound lingers longer than you expect. It isn't just a gate closing. It feels like an entire chapter of your life, quietly sealing itself away. The busy roads, familiar faces, noisy marketplaces, and warm family dinners now belong to another world. Ahead lies a place built from thick gray stone, surrounded by fields, orchards, gardens, and silence so complete that even your own footsteps seem strangely loud. You inhale the cool morning air. It carries the scent of damp earth, burning firewood, beeswax candles, and fresh herbs growing somewhere inside the monastery walls. Nothing smells rushed. Nothing moves quickly. Even the breeze seems to have taken a vow of patience. A monk dressed in a rough wool robe approaches without hurry. His sandals scrape softly across the courtyard. He offers a gentle nod instead of a cheerful greeting. Words, you soon learn, are precious here. There is little need to waste them. His robe isn't impressive. In fact, it looks remarkably uncomfortable. The coarse wool would probably make modern sweaters feel like luxury blankets. You briefly wonder whether medieval monks secretly spent half their lives trying not to scratch their shoulders. They probably did. Your guide motions for you to follow. No dramatic speeches, no grand welcome, simply a quiet invitation to begin. The courtyard opens before you. A stone well sits at its center. Nearby, brothers carry buckets of water with practiced ease. Others sweep walkways already spotless. One tends vegetables in neat garden rows. Another repairs a wooden cart with careful concentration. Nobody appears idle. Even the quiet has work to do. You expected endless prayer. Instead, you find something closer to an entire village operating with remarkable discipline. Every movement has purpose. Every task belongs to someone. You soon realize that becoming a monk isn't escaping work. It's exchanging one kind of labor for another. The monastery church rises above everything else. Tall arches stretch toward the cloudy sky. Simple stained glass catches the first hints of daylight. There are no golden palaces here, no extravagant decorations. Beauty comes through proportion, light, and calm, rather than wealth. Inside, cool stone surrounds you. Rows of wooden benches wait patiently. Candles flicker beneath carved crosses. The silence feels different indoors. Outside, silence belongs to nature. Inside, it belongs to intention. You almost whisper without realizing it. The room itself seems to encourage softer thoughts. The older monk finally speaks. His voice is calm. You are here to learn obedience, not knowledge, not comfort, not even holiness. Obedience comes first. That single word hangs in your mind. Modern life often celebrates personal choice. Choose your career. Choose your schedule. Choose your favorite coffee. Choose your streaming service. Here, many choices simply disappear. The monastery chooses for you. When to wake, when to eat, when to pray, when to work, when to sleep, even when to speak. Freedom as you understand it quietly steps aside. You are shown your sleeping cell. Calling it a room feels generous. Stone walls surround a narrow wooden bed, covered by a straw mattress. A folded wool blanket rests neatly on top. A tiny wooden stool stands beside the bed. A shelf holds a single candle. That's nearly everything. No decorations. No family photographs. No bookshelf packed with novels. No secret snack drawer. Especially no secret snack drawer. You suddenly appreciate just how luxurious your own bedroom really is. Even the messy corner where clothes mysteriously multiply overnight seems rather charming by comparison. You place your small belongings down. There isn't much space anyway. The room seems designed to remind you that possessions can easily become distractions. Whether that's comforting or slightly alarming depends entirely on how attached you are to pillows. The monastery bell rings. Its deep tone rolls across every building. Immediately, the brothers begin moving, not running. Never rushing. Simply responding. Each person knows exactly where to go. No confusion, no shouting, no last-minute searching for missing sandals. The rhythm has been repeated thousands of times before your arrival. You're simply stepping into a pattern that existed long before you. You follow them into prayer. The words are unfamiliar. The melodies rise gently beneath the stone ceiling. Voices blend together without anyone trying to stand out. Nobody performs. Nobody seeks applause. The music seems less concerned with impressing listeners than with steadying hearts. After prayers come chores. You receive a broom. Simple enough, you think. Sweep a hallway. How difficult could that be? Surprisingly difficult when the hallway stretches across half the monastery. Every corner collects dust carried in from muddy boots. And you begin noticing that medieval floors possess an almost magical ability to become dirty again moments after cleaning them. Still, nobody complains. Complaining serves little purpose. The work itself becomes part of the lesson. Patience. Humility. Attention. Even sweeping asks something of your character. By afternoon, your feet ache. Your shoulders feel heavier than expected. The peaceful monastery has already proven far more physically demanding than the peaceful image living in your imagination. The sun slowly sinks lower. Golden light touches the stone walls. Birdsong drifts through the gardens. For a brief moment, everything feels almost timeless. You begin understanding why some people willingly chose this life, not because it was easy, because it offered certainty. Outside these walls, kingdoms rise and fall. Wars begin. Harvests fail. Roads become dangerous. Inside, tomorrow will likely resemble today. There is comfort in predictable rhythms. Yet predictability comes with sacrifice. As evening approaches, another bell echoes through the monastery. Another prayer. Another quiet meal. Another stretch of silence. You notice how quickly your sense of time has already started changing. The hours no longer belong to you. They belong to the bells. And tomorrow, before the first hint of sunrise reaches these ancient stones, one of those bells will wake you from your thin straw mattress to begin the entire rhythm again. You haven't even completed your first full day. Already you're beginning to suspect that surviving life as a medieval monk requires far more endurance than anyone standing outside those great wooden gates could ever imagine. The first thing you learn about monastery life is that the sun does not decide when your day begins. The bell does, long before golden light touches the fields outside the walls, long before birds begin their morning songs, long before most people in the medieval world have even considered leaving their beds. A deep sound travels through the darkness. Boom! The bell moves through the stone corridors. Boom! It reaches your tiny sleeping cell. Boom! And suddenly, the peaceful life you imagined yesterday has a very different feeling. Your eyes open slowly. For a moment, you have no idea where you are. The stone walls around you look unfamiliar. The cold air reminds you immediately. You are not at home. You are inside the monastery. You are a monk now, or at least, you are trying to become one. Your body strongly disagrees with this new schedule. You search for warmth beneath the thin wool blanket, hoping perhaps the bell was some kind of misunderstanding. Maybe it was only a warning. Maybe everyone else stays in bed. Maybe there is another bell for the actual beginning of the day. Then you hear movement outside. Footsteps. Doors opening. Quiet voices. The monastery is already awake. Apparently, your old habit of negotiating with your alarm clock will not be useful here. There is no snooze button. There is no 5 more minutes. There is only the bell. You quickly dress in your rough robe. The fabric feels heavy and scratchy against your skin. It was designed for durability, not comfort. The monastery does not ask whether your clothing feels pleasant. It asks whether it serves its purpose. You step into the corridor. The darkness surrounds you. Only small candles provide light. Their flames flicker against the stone walls, creating moving shadows that make the ancient building feel alive. The other monks walk quietly toward the church. Nobody complains. Nobody yawns dramatically. Nobody looks for coffee. You suddenly realize how much modern people depend on small comforts to begin the day. A warm drink, a soft bed, a bright room, a few minutes of silence before responsibilities begin. Here, the first moments of your day belong entirely to discipline. You enter the church. The air is colder than outside. The stone floor beneath your feet feels unforgiving. The monks arrange themselves in their places. Then the prayers begin. The sound is slow and steady. Hundreds of years of tradition are carried through these voices. You may not understand every word, but you understand the purpose. This is not just a morning activity. It is the foundation of the entire day. The prayers create a rhythm, a reminder that every hour has meaning. After the first prayers, the monastery slowly becomes active. Some monks return to their cells for short periods. Others begin preparing for their tasks. The kitchen fires are lit. Animals are fed. Gardens are checked. Tools are collected. The quiet building transforms into a place of constant work. You expected monks to spend most of their time sitting peacefully. Instead, you discover something surprising. A medieval monastery is not just a religious place. It is a self-sufficient world. It needs farmers, cooks, builders, teachers, writers, gardeners, healers. Everyone has a role, and every role matters. Your first morning task seems simple. Carry supplies from one building to another. A few baskets. A short walk. Nothing difficult. At least that is what you think. The problem is that medieval monasteries were built for people who were used to physical labor. The baskets are heavier than expected. The paths are uneven. The cold air makes your hands stiff. By the time you finish, you understand something important. Daily life in the Middle Ages was not designed around convenience. Everything required effort. Every meal, every piece of clothing, every building, every page of a book. Modern people can walk into a room and flip a switch. A medieval monk might spend part of his day helping gather wood just to keep that room warm. You begin noticing these details everywhere. The candles burning in the church required beeswax. The bread on the table required grain to be grown, harvested, and ground. The ink used for writing required careful preparation. Nothing appeared by magic. Everything came from someone's labor. And inside the monastery, that labor was shared. By late morning, your stomach reminds you that you are not following your normal routine anymore. The first meal is not waiting whenever you feel hungry. Food arrives according to the monastery schedule. The monks gather together. The meal is simple. Bread, vegetables, perhaps some soup. Nothing fancy. Nobody talks loudly. Nobody rushes. Eating itself becomes another practice of discipline. You look around and notice something. Nobody seems focused on what they are missing. They are focused on what they have. That mindset is one of the hardest things for you to understand. Outside these walls, people dream about having more. More money, more possessions, more comfort. Inside these walls, the goal is often the opposite. Less distraction, less desire, less attachment. Whether you agree with that philosophy or not, living it every day is another challenge entirely. After the meal, the bell rings again. Another transition. Another reminder. Your time does not belong to you. The monastery moves like a great machine. Every person is one small part. You begin wondering how long it would take before this strange rhythm feels normal. A week? A month? A year? The older monks move through the day with incredible calm. They do not seem surprised by anything. Rain? Continue working. Cold? Continue working. Tired? Continue working. The routine has shaped them. It has removed hesitation. You begin to understand that becoming a medieval monk is not about one dramatic decision. It is about thousands of small choices repeated until they become your entire way of living. The afternoon arrives. You walk through the monastery courtyard again. Yesterday, you saw a peaceful place. Today, you see something different. You see the hidden effort behind that peace. The clean paths, the warm rooms, the carefully prepared meals, the beautiful books. All of it exists because people wake up before sunrise and continue working long after their bodies would prefer to rest. The monastery looks calm because countless hours of discipline are happening beneath the surface. And as another evening bell begins to echo across the walls, you realize something uncomfortable. The hardest part of this life may not be the cold. It may not be the simple food. It may not even be the endless work. The hardest part may be knowing that tomorrow morning, before your mind is ready and before your body has recovered, that same bell will call you awake again, and you will have to answer. The first thing you discover about silence is that it sounds much louder than you expected. When you first entered the monastery, the quiet felt peaceful. It felt refreshing. After years of noise from markets, conversations, animals, and crowded roads, the absence of constant sound seemed almost like a gift. But after spending more time inside these walls, you begin to notice something. Silence is not empty. Silence makes you notice everything. The sound of your own footsteps, the crackling of a candle flame, the rustling of a monk's robe as he walks past, the distant wind moving around the stone towers. Every tiny sound becomes impossible to ignore. And that is exactly the point. The monastery is not simply quiet because nobody has anything to say. It is quiet because silence itself is part of the training. You quickly learn that speaking is not forbidden completely. Monks are not walking statues. They must communicate. They must organize work. They must teach. They must solve problems. But unnecessary conversation is carefully controlled. Every word is expected to have a purpose. This sounds simple until you try it yourself. In your old life, words appeared without effort. A greeting when someone passed by. A comment about the weather. A joke during a meal. A quick complaint when something went wrong. Inside the monastery, those small habits suddenly become challenges. You begin catching yourself. You see another monk carrying a heavy load. Your first instinct is to say something, maybe offer encouragement, maybe make a small joke, maybe simply say hello. But then you remember, silence. You continue walking. The words remain inside. At first it feels strange, almost unnatural. Your mind searches for conversations that no longer happen. You start realizing how much of everyday life depends on talking. People share stories. People feel uncomfortable moments. People use words to avoid boredom. Here, boredom has nowhere to hide. And that may be one of the hardest parts. A medieval monk does not just learn to stop speaking. He learns to sit with his own thoughts. You begin noticing how quickly your mind creates distractions. While walking through the courtyard, you think about food. During prayer, you think about unfinished tasks. During work, you think about memories from home. Your body may be inside the monastery, but your thoughts constantly try to escape. The older monks seem different. They move calmly. They work quietly. They appear completely comfortable with the stillness. You wonder if they were always like this. Probably not. Silence is a skill. Like farming, like writing, like building. It must be practiced. Day after day. Hour after hour, the monastery teaches through repetition. You wake up. You pray. You work. You eat quietly. You return to prayer. The same pattern continues. And slowly, something changes. You begin hearing things you ignored before. The sound of rain against the roof, the movement of leaves outside the window, the gentle rhythm of breathing during prayer. The world becomes smaller, but somehow more detailed. Yet this peaceful silence has another side. It can also feel lonely. Imagine spending an entire day surrounded by people but barely exchanging words with them. You know everyone around you. You share meals. You share work. You share the same walls. But your conversations are limited. Your emotions stay mostly private. Modern people often fear being alone. Medieval monks experience something different. They practice being alone while surrounded by others. That requires a completely different kind of strength. One afternoon, you walk through the monastery courtyard and see two monks repairing a wooden bench. They work side by side. Neither speaks. At first, it seems uncomfortable. Then you notice something. They do not need words. They understand the task. They understand each other's movements. Their cooperation has become almost automatic. The silence is not separating them. It is connecting them. You begin to understand that silence in the monastery is not meant to punish. It is meant to change the way you experience the world. Outside, people often speak to fill space. Inside, monks try to create space where thoughts can settle. Of course, not every moment feels peaceful. There are times when you miss ordinary conversation. You miss hearing familiar voices. You miss laughter. You miss telling someone about a small event that happened during your day. A beautiful sunset. A strange animal you saw. A funny mistake. Simple things. The monastery reminds you that even ordinary conversations are valuable. You never realize how much you enjoy something until it disappears. Another challenge arrives during meals. You sit with the other monks. The room is filled with people. The smell of warm food rises from the bowls. But the atmosphere remains quiet. You eat slowly. You listen to readings instead of conversations. A monk reads from a religious text while everyone eats. The words become the background sound of the meal. At first, your mind struggles. You want to talk. You want to react. You want the normal human experience of sharing food with others. But slowly, you adapt. The meal becomes less about entertainment. It becomes about gratitude. You begin noticing the effort behind every bite. The farmers who grew the grain. The workers who prepared the food. The cooks who spent hours making the meal. Silence gives you time to notice things. Things you usually ignore. Still, there is one problem. The silence never takes a day off. It does not care if you are tired. It does not care if you are lonely. It does not care if you have a story you desperately want to share. The rule remains. Control yourself. Choose your words. Speak only when necessary. For someone raised in a world where conversation flows freely, this may be one of the most difficult adjustments. You thought the cold stone walls would be the hardest part of monastery life. You thought the simple food would test you. You thought the early mornings would break your energy. But now you discover something deeper. The monastery is not only changing what you do, it is changing how you think. And perhaps that is why so many people struggled with this life. Because controlling your hands is easier than controlling your habits. Carrying a heavy basket is easier than carrying the weight of your own thoughts. By the end of the day, when the final prayers are finished, and you return to your small cell, the silence follows you. You lie beneath a thin blanket. The candle beside you slowly burns lower. Outside, the monastery sleeps, but your mind remains awake. You realize tomorrow will bring the same challenge. The bell, the prayers, the work, the silence. And slowly, patiently, the monastery will continue teaching you a lesson you never expected. Sometimes, the hardest sound to face is not noise. It is the sound of nothing at all. The first thing you notice about food in the monastery is not the taste. It is the absence of choice. Outside these walls, even in the medieval world, people understood food as something connected to survival, celebration, and community. A family might gather around a fire after a long day of work. A village might celebrate a successful harvest with extra portions of bread, meat, or drink. Food carried memories. Inside the monastery, food has a different purpose. It keeps you alive. It gives you enough strength to continue your duties. Nothing more. Nothing less. When you first sit down for another meal with the monks, you look at the wooden bowl placed in front of you. The contents are simple. A piece of bread. A small serving of vegetables. Perhaps a thin soup. You stare at it for a moment, waiting for something else, maybe another dish, maybe something warmer, maybe a small reward after waking before sunrise and working throughout the day. But nothing comes. The meal is complete. This is it. You glance around the table. The other monks eat calmly. Nobody looks disappointed. Nobody appears surprised. They have learned something you have not yet learned. Expectation creates frustration. The less you expect, the easier it becomes to accept. Of course, your stomach does not understand philosophy. Your stomach has its own opinions. And right now, it is wondering where the rest of the meal disappeared. You remember meals from your old life. The variety. The conversations. The feeling of choosing what you wanted. Here, choice is limited. The monastery schedule decides when you eat. The rules decide what you eat. The seasons decide what is available. Your personal cravings have very little influence. At first, this feels like a punishment. You begin noticing every missing comfort. No sweet treats whenever you want. No extra portions because you are having a difficult day. No special meal because you simply feel like it. The monastery does not organize life around your feelings. It organizes life around discipline. And hunger becomes another teacher. You quickly discover that hunger changes the way you think. A small piece of bread becomes valuable. A warm bowl of soup feels like a gift. A simple meal prepared with care becomes something worth appreciating. The monks understand this. Their relationship with food is not based on entertainment. It is based on gratitude. But gratitude does not mean it is easy. There are days when the food feels especially difficult. Cold winter mornings, long hours of physical labor, heavy farm work. After carrying supplies or working outside in freezing weather, your body wants more energy. It wants something filling, something comforting. Instead, you receive the same simple meal. And that is when the real challenge begins. Not with the food itself, with your reaction to it. You realize the monastery is training your mind as much as your body. Can you accept what is given? Can you remain calm when something is not exactly what you want? Can you be thankful without constantly comparing? These questions follow you through every meal. The monks also follow a strict calendar of fasting. Certain days require even greater restraint. Meals may become smaller. Some foods may disappear entirely. The purpose is not simply to make people uncomfortable. The practice is meant to create self-control. To remind monks that desires do not always need to be immediately satisfied. A difficult lesson, especially for someone who has spent years following every small craving. You begin to understand that monastery life removes many of the small decisions that modern people make every day. What should I eat? When should I eat? What do I want today? Those questions vanish. The routine answers them for you. At first, that feels limiting. Later, you begin to understand the strange comfort of it. There is less mental effort, less negotiation, less temptation. The day simply moves forward, yet the body still struggles. During long fasting periods, you notice every smell from the kitchen: fresh bread, cooking vegetables, warm soup. The simplest foods suddenly become incredibly tempting. A monk passing by with a basket of bread feels like someone carrying treasure. You laugh quietly at yourself. A few days ago you wanted luxury. Now you would happily celebrate a slightly larger piece of bread. The monastery has already changed your definition of comfort. You also learned that monks were not isolated from the natural world. Food depended on seasons. In spring, gardens produced new vegetables. In summer, fields required constant attention. In autumn, harvest became a major effort. In winter, stored food became essential. Every meal connected you to the work of many hands. The bread on your table was not just bread. It represented farmers preparing the land, workers collecting grain, people grinding flour, bakers tending fires. The monastery taught that ordinary things were never truly ordinary. They were the result of patience. One afternoon, you help in the kitchen. You expect it to be easier than outdoor labor. You are wrong. The kitchen is another world of constant activity. Large pots must be prepared. Firewood must be carried. Ingredients must be cleaned. Meals must be ready at exact times. The cooks work with the same discipline as everyone else. There is no relaxing. simply because you are indoors. The monastery has no place where work completely disappears. Every room has a purpose. Every person has responsibility. By evening, you return to the dining hall. The same wooden tables. The same quiet atmosphere. The same simple food. But something inside you has changed. You no longer look at the meal the same way. It is still plain. It is still limited. But now you notice the effort behind it. You notice the warmth, the care, the fact that after a long day, something prepared by human hands is waiting for you. Maybe that is the hidden lesson of monastery food. It was never meant to impress you. It was meant to teach you to notice, to slow down, to appreciate what is usually ignored. Still, you cannot completely forget the world outside. Sometimes you imagine a feast, fresh fruit, rich foods, a table full of choices. The thought makes you smile, because you realize something funny. You entered the monastery thinking the hardest challenges would be the stone walls and the strict rules. But now you discover that a small wooden bowl can test your patience just as much. Tomorrow, another simple meal will arrive. Another piece of bread. Another bowl of soup. Another reminder that surviving as a medieval monk is not about having everything you want. It is about learning how little you truly need. And that lesson may be harder to swallow than the food itself. The monastery teaches you many things, but perhaps the strangest lesson is learning that time no longer belongs to you. Before entering these walls, time felt like something you controlled. You decided when to wake up. You decided when to rest. You decided how long to spend on a task. You could change your plans. You could delay something until tomorrow. You could follow your own rhythm. Inside the monastery, that illusion disappears. Time belongs to the bells. The first bell wakes you. Another bell calls you to prayer. Another signals work. Another announces meals. Another tells you when the day is ending. The entire rhythm of your existence is measured by sound. At first, it feels restrictive, almost like being trapped inside someone else's schedule. You miss the freedom of choosing. You miss the ability to say, I will do this later. But the monastery does not recognize later. There is only the moment you are given. And when the bell rings, you move. The older monks make it look effortless. They hear the sound and immediately respond. No hesitation. No confusion. No argument with themselves. Their bodies seem to know what to do before their minds even decide. You are not there yet. Every bell feels like a small interruption. Every transition feels like a challenge. You are constantly adjusting. Just when you become comfortable with one activity, another begins. Prayer, work, reading, meals, silence, sleep, then repeat. The schedule creates a strange feeling. The days seem long while you are living them. Yet when you look back, weeks appear to disappear. The repetition creates its own kind of time. One morning, you wake before the bell. This surprises you. Your body has started learning. The monastery's rhythm is slowly becoming your rhythm. You lie there in the darkness, listening. The building is still. The world outside is quiet. For a moment you understand why some monks found comfort in this life. There is no uncertainty about what comes next. The day has already been prepared. The hours have already been arranged. All you have to do is follow. But following is not always easy, especially when the schedule demands more than your body wants to give. There are days when you wake exhausted. Days when your muscles remember yesterday's work. Days when the cold stone floor feels especially unforgiving. Yet the bell rings anyway. The monastery does not adjust because you are tired. The seasons change. The weather changes. Your energy changes. The schedule remains. This consistency is what makes the discipline powerful. It does not depend on motivation. It depends on commitment. You begin noticing something about the monks who have lived here for many years. They are not always stronger. They are not always more energetic. They simply have fewer arguments with themselves. They do not waste time deciding whether they want to do something. They have already decided. Years of repetition have removed the struggle. You begin to understand that discipline is not about forcing yourself forever. Eventually, it becomes automatic, like walking, like breathing, like responding to the bell. Of course, your modern instincts fight against this. Your mind searches for variety, something different, something exciting, a surprise. The monastery offers very little of that. The same corridors, the same prayers, the same tasks, the same meals, the same walls. At first, this feels boring, painfully boring. You wonder how anyone could live this way for years. How could someone wake up every day knowing almost exactly what will happen? But slowly, you discover another side of repetition. It creates focus. When there are fewer distractions, small things become more meaningful. A flower blooming in the garden, the changing color of the sky, the sound of rain after a dry season, a well-prepared meal, a beautifully written page. The monastery removes excitement, but increases awareness. You start seeing details you would have ignored before. One afternoon, you are assigned to help repair a section of the monastery wall. The task is repetitive. Carry stones, mix material, place each piece carefully. Again and again. After the first hour, you are bored. After the second hour, you are tired. After the third hour, something unexpected happens. Your thoughts become quieter. You stop fighting the repetition. You simply work. Your hands follow the task. Your mind becomes calm. You realize the monks may not see repetition as an enemy. They may see it as a doorway, a way to escape constant distraction. Outside the monastery, people chase new experiences, new possessions, new entertainment. Inside, monks often search for stability, a steady mind, a peaceful heart, a controlled life. Whether this is easier is another question, because there is a hidden difficulty. When every day looks similar, you cannot hide from yourself. There are no constant distractions, no endless entertainment, no busy schedule to keep uncomfortable thoughts away. You spend a lot of time with your own mind, and your own mind can be a difficult companion. You remember mistakes. You remember people you miss. You remember the life you left behind. The monastery gives you silence, but silence gives your thoughts room to speak. This is where many people would struggle, not because the work is impossible, not because the food is unbearable, but because there is nowhere to escape. The walls that protect you from the outside world also force you to face the inside world. As evening arrives, the final bells echo through the monastery. You walk toward prayer with the other monks. The same path, the same stone floor, the same candlelight, but today, something feels slightly different. You are beginning to understand the pattern. You are beginning to feel the rhythm. You are not completely comfortable, not yet, but you are no longer fighting every moment. The monastery is slowly changing you. Not through dramatic events, not through grand discoveries. Through small actions repeated every single day. Wake, pray, work, eat, rest, repeat. A life built from ordinary moments. And perhaps that is the greatest challenge of becoming a medieval monk, not surviving one difficult day, but accepting thousands of similar days and finding meaning inside them. Because anyone can endure a storm. The real test is learning how to live through the quiet seasons. The monastery teaches you many difficult lessons, but one of the most unexpected is learning that comfort can become a weakness. Before you entered these walls, comfort seemed like something everyone naturally deserved. A warm place to sleep, soft clothing, a full meal, a quiet moment after a tiring day. These things felt ordinary. You rarely thought about them. You simply expected them. But the monastery has a way of removing ordinary comforts one by one, until you suddenly notice how many small luxuries were surrounding you all along. The first thing you notice is your bed. Or perhaps calling it a bed is generous. It is a wooden frame, a thin mattress filled with straw, a simple wool blanket, nothing more. You sit down carefully the first night, expecting your body to adjust quickly. It does not. The straw beneath you feels uneven. The wood beneath the mattress reminds you that softness is not guaranteed. You turn one way, then another. You search for a comfortable position. Eventually, you stop trying. The bed is not going to become comfortable. You are the one who must adapt. That realization feels strangely important. The monastery does not change itself to suit you. You change yourself to suit the monastery. After several nights, something surprising happens. You stop noticing the discomfort, not because the bed improved, because your expectations changed. The same thing happens with almost everything. The cold stone walls, the simple meals, the rough clothing, the limited possessions. At first, every inconvenience feels impossible. Later, it simply becomes normal. This is how the monastery slowly reshapes your understanding of comfort. You begin seeing how much effort people outside these walls spend trying to avoid even the smallest discomfort. A cold morning? Find warmth. A boring moment? Find entertainment. A difficult task? Find an easier way. Inside the monastery, difficulty is not always something to escape. Sometimes it is something to accept. You begin to understand why monks chose simple clothing. The robe is not designed to make them look impressive. It is designed to remind them of simplicity. Every time you put it on, you remember the life you chose. There is no fashion, no competition, no need to impress anyone. Everyone looks similar. The person wearing expensive clothing outside the monastery and the person wearing simple clothing inside are both reminded of the same thing. Appearances do not define a person. Of course, your old instincts do not disappear immediately. You still notice things. A visitor arriving with better clothing. A merchant passing through with colorful fabrics. A traveler carrying interesting objects from distant places. For a moment, curiosity returns. You wonder what it would feel like to own something beautiful, something rare, something only yours. Then you look around the monastery. Most monks own very little. Yet many appear peaceful. This confuses you, because the outside world often teaches the opposite lesson. People collect things because they believe those things will create happiness. The monastery suggests something different. Sometimes having less creates space for something else. More focus, more awareness, more time. Whether that trade is worth it depends on the person. And for many people, it would be an incredibly difficult trade. Because possessions are not only objects. They carry memories. A gift from someone you love, a tool you worked hard to earn, a piece of clothing connected to a special moment. Giving things up is not always simple. It can feel like giving away pieces of your old identity. This is why becoming a monk was not just changing your location. It was changing your relationship with everything around you. One afternoon, you enter a storage room inside the monastery. Compared with homes outside, it looks almost empty. A few tools, some books, necessary supplies. Nothing decorative, nothing unnecessary. The room feels strangely calm. You realize something. When you own fewer things, you spend less energy protecting them. There is no fear of losing a collection, no worry about maintaining expensive possessions, no constant desire for the next thing. The monks have removed one source of distraction, but they have replaced it with another challenge. Without possessions to focus on, they must focus on themselves. And that is much harder. A person can hide behind achievements, behind wealth, behind appearance, behind a busy lifestyle. Inside the monastery, those hiding places become smaller. You are simply yourself, your thoughts, your habits, your weaknesses, your patience, your discipline. The monastery reveals what is already inside you. And sometimes that is uncomfortable. You also learn that monks were not trying to make themselves miserable. This is an important difference. They were not waking up every morning thinking, how can I make today harder? Their goal was not suffering. Their goal was control. To prove that they could live with less. To prove that desire did not have to control every decision. Still, there are moments when you miss comfort. After a long day of work, you imagine a soft bed. After a simple meal, you imagine a feast. During a cold night, you imagine a warm room. These thoughts are normal. Even experienced monks understood human nature. The challenge was not having desires. The challenge was learning not to be controlled by them. One evening, you sit near a small fire with several older monks. The room is quiet. The flames move slowly. An old monk repairs a piece of clothing with careful attention. You notice something. He is not unhappy. He is not constantly wishing for a different life. He seems completely present. That is the part you struggle to understand. Maybe comfort is not only about what surrounds you. Maybe it is also about how you experience what surrounds you. A person in a palace can feel restless. A person in a simple room can feel peaceful. The monastery does not promise an easier life. It promises a different one. And every day inside these walls teaches you that survival is not always about having more. Sometimes survival means learning how to need less. The next morning, when you wake on the same straw mattress and put on the same rough robe, something feels slightly different. The bed is still hard. The robe is still rough. The meal will still be simple. But your resistance is weaker. The monastery is slowly winning its quiet battle, not by forcing you, by changing what you consider normal. And perhaps that is the most powerful transformation of all. Because once your idea of comfort changes, the entire world begins to look different. The monastery teaches you that giving up comfort is difficult, but giving up freedom may be even harder. Because comfort is something you can slowly forget. Freedom is something you feel every single day. Outside these walls, even a poor person has small choices. Where to walk, who to speak with, when to work, when to rest, what task to do first, where to go next. Inside the monastery, those choices become smaller. Your day has a path. Your actions have limits. Your movements follow rules created long before you arrived. At first, this feels strange. You wake up and already know what comes next. The bell decides. The schedule decides. The monastery decides. You begin to wonder where your own decisions went. The first few weeks are the hardest because your old habits are still alive. Your mind remembers the feeling of choosing. You remember walking through villages without a fixed destination. You remember stopping to talk with someone simply because you wanted to. You remember changing your plans because something interesting appeared. Those small freedoms now feel surprisingly valuable. Inside the monastery, every action has a purpose. Even walking is not random. A monk does not simply wander around. He moves because there is a task, a prayer, a responsibility, a duty. The monastery is built around order. Every room has a function. Every hour has a purpose. Every person has a role. This order creates stability, but stability has a price. You lose the ability to simply follow your own mood. Imagine waking up one morning and deciding you want to spend the day outside, walking through forests, visiting nearby villages, exploring new places. In your old life, perhaps you could do that. Here, you cannot. The monastery is your world. The walls that protect you also define your boundaries. For many people, this would be the hardest part. Not hunger, not cold, not work. The feeling of being limited. You begin understanding why becoming a monk was a serious decision. People did not simply join because they wanted a peaceful place to live. They were accepting a completely different way of existence. A monk was not taking a short break from ordinary life. He was leaving much of it behind. Family, personal ambitions, travel, possessions, many everyday choices. The monastery offered something in return. A life with structure, a community, a clear purpose. But the exchange was enormous. One afternoon, you stand near the monastery gate. Beyond it is the road. The same road that travelers use. The same road that leads to towns, markets, and distant places. You can hear the outside world moving. Carts passing. People talking. Animals walking along the path. Life continues beyond the walls. For a moment, you feel the pull of curiosity. What is happening out there? What stories are being created? What places are you missing? The gate represents more than an entrance. It represents the life you left behind. Then you hear the monastery bell. The sound travels across the courtyard. A reminder. Your place is here. You turn away from the road. You walk back inside. This moment happens many times, not always with a gate. sometimes with a memory, sometimes with a thought, sometimes with a simple desire. The outside world constantly reminds you that another life exists. The challenge is learning to accept the life you chose. The older monks understand this. They are not unaware of the outside world. They are not trapped people who never wonder what they are missing. They made a choice, and every day they continue making that choice. That may be the deepest meaning of discipline. Not making one decision, making the same decision again and again. Even when it becomes difficult, even when temptation appears, even when another path looks easier, you begin noticing how carefully the monastery controls distractions. There are no random entertainments, no unnecessary travel, no constant search for excitement. The environment itself encourages focus. A quiet room, a simple task, a repeated routine. Everything points you back toward the same goal. But humans are naturally curious. Your mind searches for something different. You notice small changes. A bird landing in the courtyard, a visitor arriving from another region, a new book brought into the library, a different type of weather. Small events become important because there are fewer of them. The monastery reduces the number of experiences, but it increases your attention toward the experiences that remain. You begin understanding why monks could spend years in one place. They were not living the same day exactly. They were seeing the same world more deeply. A garden was not just a garden. It was a place of changing seasons. A book was not just a book. It was the result of years of human effort. A prayer was not just words. It was a moment of reflection. Still, there are moments when the restrictions feel heavy. A young monk may miss his family. He may wonder about friends he left behind. He may think about the person he could have become outside. These thoughts do not disappear simply because someone wears a robe. Monks were still human. They still experienced doubt. They still had memories. They still had emotions. The difference was that they learned to live alongside those feelings. Not every difficult thought needed to control their actions. That lesson is one of the hardest. Because freedom is not only about having choices. Sometimes freedom is about not being controlled by every desire. The monastery teaches a strange kind of freedom. A person outside may have thousands of choices, but feel lost. A monk may have fewer choices, but feel clear about his purpose. Which life is easier? That depends on the person. But one thing becomes clear. Surviving as a medieval monk was not simply about following rules. It was about changing your understanding of what freedom means. By the end of another long day, you return to your small room. The door closes. The candle burns. The monastery becomes quiet. You think about the road outside, the places you could visit, the things you could do. Then you think about the life inside these walls, the purpose, the routine, the calm. You still miss parts of the old world, but you are beginning to see why some people willingly left it. Because sometimes the hardest prison is not having too few choices. Sometimes it is having too many. One of the hardest things about becoming a medieval monk is discovering that silence is not always peaceful. At first, silence feels like a gift. After leaving behind the noise of ordinary life, the quiet halls of the monastery seem almost magical. No crowded streets, no endless conversations, no constant demands from the outside world. Only stone walls, candlelight, and stillness. You think this must be the easiest part. You imagine that after years of noise and distraction, silence will feel like rest. But then you experience real silence, not a few quiet minutes, not a peaceful evening. A life built around it. And suddenly you discover something unexpected. Silence makes you hear everything. The sound of your own thoughts. The memories you tried to ignore. The questions you never answered. The worries you buried beneath daily activity. Outside the monastery, people can escape their thoughts easily. There is always something happening. A conversation, a task, a journey, a new problem. Inside these walls, there are fewer distractions. Your mind becomes louder. The monastery does not only test your body, it tests your ability to sit with yourself. Every day, There are moments when you must remain completely quiet. During prayer, during study, during certain meals, during personal reflection. At first, these moments feel uncomfortable. You want to fill the space. You want a conversation, a sound, anything that breaks the stillness. You begin understanding why silence is considered a discipline. Talking is easy. Being quiet requires control. Words appear simple, but they have power. A careless sentence can create conflict. An unnecessary complaint can disturb peace. A moment of gossip can damage trust. The monastery treats speech carefully because words reveal the condition of the mind. If your thoughts are restless, your words often become restless too. The monks learn to speak less, not because they have nothing to say, because they understand that not everything needs to be said. This is another difficult adjustment for you. In ordinary life, conversation creates connection. Stories are shared. Jokes are told. News travels from person to person. Laughter fills rooms. Inside the monastery, conversation has boundaries. There is time for necessary discussion. There is time for learning. There is time for guidance. But random talking simply because you feel like it is discouraged. You miss that at first. You miss the small moments. A quick conversation with a friend, a laugh during work, a story shared at the end of the day. Those little things suddenly seem much more valuable. You realize how much human connection comes from simple words. Yet the monks are not without companionship. Their connection is different. It is built less on constant conversation and more on shared purpose. They work together. They pray together. They follow the same rhythm. Sometimes sitting beside someone in silence creates its own kind of friendship. You begin noticing this among the older monks. They do not need to constantly entertain each other. They are comfortable simply being present. That level of comfort takes years to develop. You are not there yet. Your mind still searches for noise. During quiet work, you catch yourself remembering old songs, old conversations, old places. Your imagination travels beyond the monastery walls. You think about people you have not seen. You wonder what has changed outside. You wonder if anyone remembers you. These thoughts come and go like visitors. The challenge is not preventing them. The challenge is not allowing them to control you. The monks have learned that the mind is always moving. The goal is not to stop every thought. The goal is to observe without being carried away. A difficult lesson, especially when your thoughts become uncomfortable. Some nights, lying in your small room, you replay memories. A conversation you regret. A decision you question. A moment you wish you could change. In the outside world, you might distract yourself. Inside the monastery, you face it. The silence gives those memories room to appear. This is why many people would struggle with monastic life. The hardest enemy is not outside. It is often within. You begin to understand why monks spent so much time studying, praying, and reflecting. They were not simply following tradition. They were training attention. They were learning how to manage the endless movement of the mind. One morning, you sit in the church before sunrise. The candles flicker. The room is cold. No one speaks. For several minutes, nothing happens. At first, you feel impatient. Then something changes. You notice the details. The sound of breathing. The movement of candle flames. The faint echo inside the stone building. The quiet becomes less empty. It becomes full. You realize silence is not the absence of something. It is its own experience. The monastery has been teaching you to notice things you once ignored. A simple meal. A slow morning. A quiet room. A moment without interruption. These things seemed boring before. Now they feel meaningful. Of course, this does not mean every moment becomes peaceful. There are still difficult days. Days when silence feels heavy. Days when you want to speak. Days when you miss the freedom of ordinary conversation. The monks were not magical people who never struggled. They were people who practiced every day, again and again. Just like any skill, you do not become patient in one afternoon. You do not become disciplined after one difficult experience. You build those qualities slowly, through repetition, through failure, through trying again. As months pass, you begin changing. You notice that you listen more. You react less quickly. You think before speaking. The silence has started shaping you, not by removing your personality, by making you more aware of it. One evening, as the sun disappears behind the monastery walls, you walk through the quiet